Hello, everyone. So this week's portion is the portion of Lech Lecha. And in this portion, God speaks to Abraham, and he tells him, go from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And there the Creator says he will make Abraham a great nation. And so Abraham and his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot and all of his people that were with him in that generation go out on a journey to the land of Canaan. And then a famine comes, and he's forced to go to Egypt, to leave the land of Canaan and go to Egypt, where Sarai is taken to Pharaoh's palace. Now, Abraham escapes death because they present themselves as brother and sister. And then a plague prevents the Egyptian king from touching her. And Abraham goes back to Canaan with a lot of gold and a lot of cattle, and he's blessed. In the land of Canaan, Lot separates from Abraham and says, you know what? Abraham says, you go your way, I'll go mine. Lot decides to go to the place of Sodom, where there was a lot of idol worshiping, and it was a very negative place. And then God decides to do the covenant, which is called the covenant between the parts, with Abraham, and where he's told that he's going to have the Holy Land, and he's going to have children, and his children will be like the dust of the earth. And still without no children, 10 years after they arrive in the land, Sarai tells Abraham to take the maidservant Hagar, and Hagar gets pregnant. She has a son, and then Sarai doesn't treat her nicely. Ishmael is born, and then 13 years later, Isaac is born. And there's the circumcision. That's kind of like a bird's eye overview of what's happening in the portion. So let's go into it a little bit, because it's kind of like all over the place. So basically, Abraham goes through 5 trials in this portion. He goes through 10 of them, 10 challenges total, 5 of them in this portion. He's commanded to leave his house, to leave his land, and he's 75 years old. There's a famine in the land. Sarai is taken to Pharaoh's palace. Lot is captured, and the circumcision is done. Those are the 5 challenges that happen in this portion. And I'm going to try and touch maybe on 3 out of the 5. So the first one is that Abraham is commanded to leave the land. And there's a lot of different interpretations on what this means, why he needed to leave the land. One of the interpretations is that the Creator says to Abraham, you know, you've reached such a high level. You've reached such a high spiritual level, because we know that Abraham's job in this world was to explain to everyone that there's one God and to help everyone believe in one God. And he had reached a very high level. Now imagine, this is ancient times. It's not like today where I can get on YouTube and the whole world can hear me. The Creator says to Abraham, if you don't go and leave your land and start going from place to place in the world, people will never know about you. They won't know that you exist, and they will never hear about you. So you need to go from place to place and spread your word. And you know, there's 4 actions that have the power to change a decree, to change your destiny. One of them is giving charity. One of them is praying. One of them is tshuva, which is repentance and changing our negativities. One of them is changing a name, which Abraham goes through. And one of them, people say, is changing residence. That's the 5th one. And what does that mean, changing residence? Why would that change a decree? When you leave your comfort zone, when you leave your home and you go to a land, he didn't know where he was going. You're humbled. You become very humble. And any ego you had to attach to anything is gone. And once you become humble, you can actually let more light in, let the Creator in. So that was the first trial. The second trial was a famine. There was a severe famine, the worst in the land that ever existed. And Abraham didn't have 1 ounce of doubt. He knew that if there was a famine, the Creator was doing it for a purpose. And he said to Sarai, you know what? Let's go down to Egypt with everyone. I know there's food there. We'll go and we'll be there till the famine is over. That was the second trial. The third one was with Sarai. So they're on their way to Egypt. And it says that Sarai was the most beautiful woman. There are 4 most beautiful women in time. Sarai was one of them. Esther, Queen Esther, Abigail, and Rachav. Those were the 4 most beautiful women in the world. And he says to Sarai, you know, I'm worried. You're so beautiful. I'm worried that they're going to try and kill me and take you because you're so beautiful. What we're going to do is we are going to put you in a suitcase, like a kind of a big suitcase, and I'll pay as much as I need to get you across the border, but we're going to hide you till we get there. What happens? Now, you can say, why didn't Abraham just rely on the Creator, rely on a miracle? And here it shows us that even though he believed in the Creator, he knew that he had to do something from his part and couldn't just sit here and say, okay, I'm just going to rely on a miracle for the Creator to save me. No, he actually decided to take action and do something that would help him get Sarai into Egypt safely. So he puts her in the suitcase. They get to the border, and imagine now there's police, I guess, or Egyptians at the border going through their stuff, and they're saying, we need to open all your suitcases, we need to see all your jewels, we need to see everything. And Abraham says, no, I will give you all the money you want, just please don't open my suitcases. And there's, of course, an argument, and of course they open the suitcase and they see Sarai. And they see how beautiful she is. And they say, you know what, she's so beautiful, she's fit for the king, she's fit for Pharaoh. And so they take her to the palace, and Abraham can't say anything. Now, it wasn't exactly a lie that he said that they were brother and sister, because Sarai was Abraham's niece, and it is family, so it wasn't a lie. So Sarai is taken to the palace, and she obviously doesn't know what to do because Pharaoh wants to take her as his wife. And so she decides to tell him the truth. And she says, we lied to you. Avram is my husband. I am married. And Pharaoh says, you know what? I don't care. I'm still going to take you as my wife. And now is when Sarai breaks down and she begs the Creator. She says, we listened to you. We went out of our land. We went to Canaan. We did everything. Please, please just help us. And the Creator says, you know what? I'm going to help you. And the Creator says to Sarai, there's a rod next to you. As soon as you say the word, this rod is going to hit the Egyptians and the king, and there's going to be a plague. And that's exactly what happened. And, it's interesting. Every action in this portion reflects on what's going to happen in further times, meaning Abraham went down to Egypt, and there was a famine. Jacob and his sons had to do the same thing. They had to go to Egypt because of the famine. Sarai guarded herself from being immodest and sleeping with Pharaoh. The women of Israel, when they were in Egypt, also kept their morality and didn't do anything immoral. Pharaoh was smitten down by boils. There were boils everywhere in the land. It says even the walls of their palace had boils. And we know that when the Israelites were there, the plagues also happened. Abraham was dismissed. In the end, Pharaoh sent Abraham with all the gold and everything, and the same thing happened with the Israelites. They left Egypt with gold and with everything. So we can see a lot of correlations between what happens in this portion and what's going to happen in the future. So that's some of the trials that Abraham went through. Now, I wanted to share with you, to go back to the first verse. It says, go from your land, from your birthplace, and from the house of your fathers to the land which I will show you. And there's a great Kabbalist called the Maharal of Prague. He was a great sage. And he said that we're made up of 3 different components. We have the soul, the body, and the intellect. And going back to Shem Shmuel, who was the Kabbalist that I spoke about last week, he explains this even a little bit deeper. He says that land refers to the body, physicality. Your birthplace refers to the soul, because when you're born, it involves bringing down a soul as well as a body. And the house of your father refers to the intellect, because the father gives his son the intellectual life. And it says that Abraham's entire service of the Creator, Abraham's entire trials and challenges that he went through in his spiritual life was about leaving one spiritual level to another. And let me explain a little bit. It says that when Nimrod, the king, wanted to punish Abraham for smashing idols, he told him to bow down to the fire, which of course he had made. And Abraham asks Nimrod, why should I bow down to the fire when the water can put out the fire? So Nimrod tells him to bow down to the water, where Abraham says, water comes from the clouds. Why not bow down to the clouds? And it goes on and on. Abraham's entire service of God was based on intellectual investigations that led him to higher and higher levels. This is what he achieved by kind of process of elimination. Whatever spiritual level he was on, he reached and he found a higher level. And that's why he left his land, his birthplace, and his father's house. Now, the problem with the intellectual approach in serving the Creator and in being in awe of the Creator is that it doesn't let you experience the Creator. You have rationalization for everything. People who are looking to understand from the intellect will go from one level to another by process of elimination. But then there's a conclusion. And the conclusion is that you'll never really experience the Creator. Because what is experiencing the Creator? Experiencing the Creator is the fourth level that Avram had to go through. And that fourth level was leave your body, your soul, and your intellect, and go to the land which I shall show you. The land. Doesn't say where. God could have easily told him, you're going to Canaan, you're going to wherever you're going to. But the land which I shall show you really refers to the Creator, refers to experiencing the Creator. So after going from one level to another of intellectual achievement, Abraham was finally ready to receive the essence of the Creator, being on the level of seeing, meaning God wanted Abraham to not only have the intellectual conviction of following the Creator, but he also wanted Abraham to experience the godliness. He wanted Abraham to experience the godliness. That's why the word "the" was added to the sentence. And the Torah is not only referring to the physical land of Israel, but to the spiritual vision behind Abraham's highest investigations, because he went from one level to another on a very intellectual investigation. And we can all do that. So while his own calculations led Abraham beyond the idolatry and beyond thinking that there's more than one Creator, the highest level of spirituality that he achieved would bring him to actually visualize and experience the Creator, to actually see beyond the land which I shall show you. That was the level that he reached that he didn't use his intellectuality for. Now, there's one thing that I would like to touch upon, and that is the mitzvah of circumcision, the law of circumcision. I said that every week we would touch upon a little bit of the laws as well. And this basically was the first mitzvah that was performed on a Jewish baby boy. In Hebrew, it's called Brit Milah. And there's, of course, questions. Why on the 8th day? Why a Brit Milah? Why on the sex organ? And I would like to address that. So there's many reasons given for the mitzvah itself, and some of them are to establish a sign that we believe in the Creator, or that in the olden days there was always some kind of a branding of the master. The slaves had some kind of a branding on them of their master, and so for us it would be a sign that we belong to the Creator. So why on the reproductive organs? One is because it symbolizes the covenant with the Creator and that it should be passed on to all generations. Another reason is that it weakens the sexual desire and pleasure, hopefully giving a person more strength to restrain himself from going to forbidden sexual encounters. And the reproductive organ was chosen since it's in the merit of that uniqueness and devotion to the Creator that we actually continue our race. And now the question of why on the 8th day. So one makes sense. It lets the baby get stronger. And by the way, if a baby is under 5 pounds on the 8th day, it doesn't happen. You wait until the baby is strong enough to actually have the circumcision. The Zohar explains that the baby must experience one Shabbat before being circumcised. And this helps the baby get the extra soul of Shabbat. Another explanation is that the number 7 represents the natural order of the world. The world was created in 7 days. And so the 8th day is a manifestation of the connection of the Israelites to the Creator, which is beyond nature. It's beyond understanding. The importance of the actual Brit: God made 13 covenants with Abraham concerning the Brit. And this one indicates that the revelation of God's 13 attributes of mercy. We know that in the prayers there's something called the 13 attributes of mercy. And the Brit Milah is part of those 13. So our sages go so far as to say that if not for the circumcision, God wouldn't even have created the heaven and earth. It is the greatest, most positive mitzvah, and it's considered to be equivalent of every mitzvah in the Torah. You know, it says that if you have the merit to go to a Brit, it's like 40 days of fasting. It is one of the highest mitzvot that a person can do, is to have a son and to have a Brit Milah. Now the question, of course, is what about girls? Girls can't have a Brit. So it says that the Jewish women are considered naturally circumcised. This means that they don't have to go through this painful mitzvah in order to achieve everything that they do, because we know that women are on a higher spiritual level than men. The whole trial of Abraham marrying Hagar, and Hagar actually gives birth to Ishmael. And I just want to go back. It's something that I read this week, is that when Pharaoh sent away Abraham and Sarai from Egypt, saying, you know, take all the riches, take everything, he said, take my daughter Hagar as your maidservant. He knew that it would be better for Hagar to live with Abraham and Sarah and be their maidservant than to grow up as a princess in the palace. He knew that she would reach a higher spiritual level. And so, of course, they were 10 years in Israel, and they hadn't had children yet. And Sarai said, you know, I'm childless, and take the maid, the Egyptian princess, and have a child with her. Her strength of character was really amazing. Not only was it she that suggested to Abraham that he marry another wife, the maidservant, but she herself convinced Hagar to go with Abraham. Gently, she did it very gently. And when Hagar became Avram's second wife, Sarai treated her with great consideration. She treated her very well. She would never receive visitors without suggesting to them that they greet Hagar also. But Hagar didn't reflect that kind of treatment towards Sarai. She wasn't selfless. And as soon as she knew that she was expecting a child, she started mocking Sarai. Then Sarai knew she had divine inspiration, and she knew that her son would be the one that would be the destiny for the people of Israel. And so she sent Hagar away. But she didn't send her away because she wanted evil for her. We're talking about the matriarchs. She sent her away because she knew that the influence that Ishmael would have over her son would take him away from the path of being one of the patriarchs of the people of Israel. So it says that there were 4 people in the Bible that were named before they were born, and one of them was Yitzchak. It says, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call him Yitzchak. So he was one of those people who received a name before he was born. And what is this name? What does that mean? It means that he was named before birth, since he was the founder of the people. And as the first child born from holy parents, Avram and Sarah were very holy people. And it says that there was an angel that came to Hagar and said, your son will be a wild man who will be attracted to life in the wilderness and to hunting animals. His hand will be raised against everyone and will attack him in return. Now Ishmael could have employed his desire for hunting for the Creator. Ishmael was also named before birth, showing that he was given the potential to rise to his greatness. But his descendants had to be able to overcome evil, overcome the evil inclination in order to do that, because he could have made himself worthy of receiving the commandments and the Torah. So there are a lot of lessons that we can take away from this portion. Lech lecha. Go out of your comfort zone. Go out of your land. What does that mean to go out of your land? In our days, especially in COVID, we can't go traveling everywhere we want. But we can go out of ourselves and do things that make us humble. Because the humbleness will help us in our growth. Abraham couldn't have reached all of his potential and reached so many people without leaving the land, without going out of his comfort zone and being able to talk to more and more people and spread the name of the Creator. And I think that in our days, if we can go out of our land, if that means picking up the phone, if that means getting on YouTube, if that means spreading something that we know can help the world, we need to take that challenge and go there. Thank you.